Thanks for joining me here on my channel, Classable ESL. I'm Haley. There are two reasons that you might have clicked on this video. Either you're a new teacher and you're looking for some tips and tricks on how to plan lessons effectively, or you're a veteran teacher and you're trying to find some ways to change things up in your classroom. Either way, I've got you covered. So in this video, I'll share with you some general lesson planning advice for basic language classes. This doesn't just apply to English classes. You could use this to teach virtually any language. Number one, you want to think about the student's needs and goals, your particular student on that particular day. Don't get hung up on thinking about curriculum ideas that you've seen online or long lists of things that you need to cover. We really want to focus in on exactly what your student needs from you. This is particularly true in online tutoring classes or one-to-one tutoring classes, but this also can be a consideration for small group teaching. If you're teaching a larger class, this might not be as applicable. Number two, write a few bullet points about the expected outcomes from the lesson. What do you want your student or students to be able to achieve by the time you finish the lesson? So for example, it could be something like, students will use the present perfect in context to describe their educational and work history. That's just one example, but we really want to focus in on what the grammar point is and what they'll be able to do with it. In order to achieve those goals, you want to build a lesson plan that will guide students to use the grammar point in context, and you also might want to include some vocabulary exercises to prime the necessary words that they will need to achieve that goal. Number three, brainstorm some fun warm-up exercises that will really appeal to your students' personality and interests. You also want to think about some creative inductive presentation methods. Teachers often rely on text in order to do inductive presentations, but this is not the only way to go about it. You could incorporate music, clips from TV shows and movies, written advertisements, or things from the radio or TV, and that can really be an interesting way to change things up for your students. So you're not always coming into class and saying, okay, read this text, notice the highlighted sections. That's one way to do it, but you want to think about ways to change that up over time. You want to sequence your activities in a logical way. That means starting with mechanical activities, working to meaningful, and then finally communicative tasks. Mechanical activities are ones where students are simply noticing or transforming the grammar at hand. Meaningful activities are ones where the students might select the correct form within a teacher-controlled and constructed framework. In meaningful activities, you really want to have a right and a wrong answer. That way you can check the student's comprehension. Communicative activities are ones where your student will use the grammar point in a real-life context or task. This could be something like answering job interview questions using the present perfect, or planning their dream vacation using modals. There are lots of different ways to achieve a communicative goal, and it's important to think about creative ways that will really entertain and interest your students. Step 5. Think of ways to explain important concepts before you even get to class. This is really important because you don't want to fall into a trap where you would have to translate something or slip out of the target language. Imagine a scenario where you come to class ready to teach the future tense and your student says, "Teacher, what does future mean?" You want to be ready to explain that concept quickly and concisely and using language the student already knows. It's important to think about how to do that before you get to class because in the moment you might be a little deer in headlights and you don't want that awkward pause. Step 6. Build some time into the end of class for self-evaluation. That way the student can tell you what they really learned, what they'd like to learn next time, and what they think about the class. This will help you in planning future lessons. Step 7, come up with a homework idea that will extend what you've taught the student that day and that will lead into their next lesson. You want to have a firm, concrete idea of what the student will do, but you also want to be prepared to pivot in case the student says something during class that makes a better idea strike you, or if the student is habitually and repeatedly making the same mistake. Then that would be a good time to assign a particular homework activity to address that problem. This is more useful for teachers who are doing one-to-one tutoring or small group teaching. It's not really possible if you have a class of 30. It's just something to consider though. And my last and most important tip is more about lesson preparation than it is about planning. You want to go in the classroom being your best. You want to be in a fantastic mood. You want to be upbeat. You want to bring the energy up high. And it's really important that you prepare yourself to do that. If that means having a snack, having a nice drink, taking a shower, getting dressed, putting on makeup, whatever it is that makes you feel really good, you want to do that before class. That way you can bring your best energy to your student. Your students will really respond to whatever energy you bring to the classroom. And what about you? What are your tips and tricks about lesson planning? How do you go into the process? What do you think about before you plan a lesson? Leave me your ideas down in the comments. I'd love to know more about how you prepare for your classes. Remember, make every class your best class. See you next time. Thanks. Bye.